Imagine a company so powerful it had its own army, bigger than most nations. A company that didn't just sell products, but waged wars, toppled kings, and ruled over 200 million people. This isn't a dystopian movie plot. This is the story of the British East India Company, the corporation that literally owned the world. And the scariest part? The blueprint it created for corporate power is more alive today than you could ever imagine. Let's rewind to the year 1600. In a small London office, a group of merchants received a royal charter from Queen Elizabeth I. Their goal was simple: get a piece of the lucrative spice trade in the East Indies. They were granted a monopoly, a license to be the only English company trading east of Africa. They called themselves the Honorable East India Company. It sounded respectable, official. But what started as a trading venture would morph into something monstrous, something the world had never seen before. Initially, they were just traders, small players in a vast and ancient network. They were competing with the Dutch, the Portuguese, and powerful local rulers in India. Their first voyages were risky. Ships were lost to storms, pirates, and disease. But the potential profits were astronomical. A single successful voyage could bring back enough pepper, cloves, and nutmeg to make its investors fantastically wealthy. This high-risk, high-reward model attracted a lot of money. And this is where the first major innovation happened. To fund these incredibly expensive and dangerous voyages, the company needed a new way to raise capital. So they started selling shares. Not just for a single voyage, but shares in the company itself, a permanent stock. This was revolutionary. For the first time, ordinary people, not just aristocrats, could invest in a global enterprise. They were essentially crowdfunding an empire. This was the birth of the modern joint stock company, the very foundation of the stock markets we know today. Think about that the next time you check your portfolio. Its origins lie in a 17th century quest for spices. With this newfound financial power, the company's ambitions grew. They weren't content with just trading. They wanted control. They started by building fortified trading posts, called factories, along the Indian coast in places like Surat, Madras, and Calcutta. These weren't just warehouses. They were mini fortresses, bristling with cannons and staffed by private soldiers. Why did a trading company need an army? Because in the 18th century, the Mughal Empire in India, which had kept the peace for centuries, was beginning to crumble. Local princes and nawabs started fighting for power, creating a chaotic and unstable environment. The company saw this chaos not as a threat, but as an opportunity. They started taking sides in local conflicts, offering their military muscle to one prince in exchange for trading rights and territory from another. They were kingmakers. This strategy culminated in the Battle of Plassey in 1757. A young, ambitious, Plassey was the turning point. The East India Company was no longer just a trading firm. It was the de facto ruler of Bengal, the richest province in India. They had the right to collect taxes, the Diwani. Suddenly, the company's revenue wasn't just from trade. It was from the land and labor of millions of Indians. This was a license to print money, and they abused it horrifically. The company's officials, now tax collectors and administrators, became notorious for their greed. They engaged in what was essentially organized looting, draining Bengal of its wealth. This period was known as the Great Pillage. Company men returned to Britain with obscene fortunes, earning them the nickname Nabobs. Their corruption was so rampant it triggered a devastating famine in Bengal in 1770, where up to 10 million people, a third of the population, starved to death, while the company continued to export grain and increase taxes. The sheer scale of this operation is staggering. By the early 19th century, the East India Company commanded a private army of over 260,000 men, twice the size of the official British Army. It controlled trade, administered justice, and collected taxes from a population larger than all of Europe combined. All of this was run not from a government building, but from a single unassuming office on Leadenhall Street in London. It was a corporate state. This incredible power, however, was built on a foundation of extreme violence and exploitation. To maximize profits, they forced farmers to grow cash crops like opium and indigo instead of food, leading to more famines. The opium was then illegally smuggled into China to pay for tea, addicting millions of Chinese people and eventually leading to the Opium Wars, wars fought by a company to force a sovereign nation to accept a drug trade. The company's rule was so brutal and mismanaged that it eventually led to its own downfall. In 1857, Indian soldiers in the company's army, known as sepoys, rebelled. The immediate trigger was a new rifle cartridge greased with animal fat, rumored to be from pigs and cows, which was offensive to both Muslim and Hindu soldiers. But the real cause was a century of resentment, exploitation, and cultural insensitivity. The Indian Rebellion of 1857 was a brutal, widespread conflict. After it was finally crushed, the British government decided the company had become too powerful and too reckless. In 1858, the British Crown took direct control of India, dissolving the East India Company's administrative powers. The company that had built an empire was itself nationalized. It lingered on as a small trading entity for a few more years, before being quietly dissolved in 1874. A corporate giant that had reshaped the globe died with a whimper. But here's the crucial part. The company died, but its ideas lived on. The East India Company created the template for corporate imperialism. The idea that a corporation could be more powerful than a state, that it could pursue profit above all else, even at the cost of human lives and national sovereignty. Think about it. The company pioneered the joint stock model, limited liability, and the boom and bust cycles of the stock market. It perfected the art of the corporate lobby, influencing politicians and bending state policy to its will. It showed how a company could use its economic power to gain political power, and then use that political power to create even more economic opportunities for itself. Does any of this sound familiar? Today we see echoes of the East India Company everywhere. We see multinational corporations with revenues larger than the GDP of many countries. We see tech giants that control the flow of information and influence elections. We see companies exploiting labor and natural resources in developing nations, often with the implicit support of powerful governments. They may not have private armies marching in the open, but they wield immense power through lobbying, financial influence, and control over critical infrastructure. The story of the East India Company is not just a dusty chapter of history. It's a cautionary tale. It's the origin story of modern capitalism, warts and all. It shows us what can happen when corporate power goes unchecked, when the pursuit of profit is detached from any sense of morality or human decency. It's a reminder that the most powerful forces shaping our world aren't always governments. Sometimes, they're the companies you buy from every single day. Thank you so much for watching. This story is so vast and complex, we've only scratched the surface. What part of the East India Company's history do you find most shocking? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this interesting, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the hidden histories that shaped our world. See you next time.